It was September 1994 when the dust began to speak. The wind always carried stories in the rural outskirts of Mashonaland, Zimbabwe. It whispered through the thatched roofs and danced with the heat haze over the yellow grass. But on one particular Thursday morning, that wind didn't whisper. It paused, held its breath, and something came riding in on its silence. At the Rua Valley Community School, nestled between dusty fields and tree lines where goats bleated like ticking clocks, the children had just been released for their morning break. The air smelt of chalk, dry grass, and pencil shavings. Laughter rippled like a river through the crowd of kids. Miss Doob, the lone teacher on playground duty that day, was seated on a weather-worn bench under the shade of a mopane tree. Her brown cardigan was pulled over her shoulders despite the heat. She was flipping through a dog-eared book, one ear tuned to the chorus of running feet and shrieking voices. "Anna, don't climb that!" she called half-heartedly to one girl scaling a tree like a baboon. Anna giggled and ignored her. There were 62 children on the school's open ground that day. The youngest, barely 5, the oldest, maybe 12. A tight little tribe, barefoot and bold, in uniforms faded by sun and scrubbing. No one noticed the silence at first, not really. But then the birds stopped chirping, and the goats down the hill suddenly bolted toward the fence as if stung by lightning. "Is that thunder?" one boy asked, cocking his head. "No clouds," said another. "It's sunny." Then they looked up. In the distance, just beyond the playground, where the field dipped into wild bushland and tangled shrubs, something glinted. It wasn't a bird or a plane. It shimmered, like a piece of sky had peeled itself open and was now reflecting back everything wrong. Tapiwa, age 11, was the first to scream. "There, behind the trees!" A ripple of motion followed as children ran toward the edge of the schoolyard. A few, older and braver, kept going, past the termite mound, past the old acacia, toward the brush. It was there that they saw it, a silver disk, hovering just above the low trees, perfectly still. No wings, no noise, just there. It hummed in their bones. Rufaro, a sharp-eyed 12-year-old with hair braided tight against her skull, whispered, "It's watching." The air shimmered around it like heat waves off a flame. Then suddenly, a black figure stepped out from behind it. No taller than a child, thin, impossibly so. Its skin gleamed like obsidian under the sun, and its eyes, those eyes, were enormous, pitch dark, unblinking. I can hear it," whispered one of the younger kids. "Inside my head." When the children ran back screaming, Miss Doob sprang to her feet. "Quiet down! What is going on?" "They're coming! They looked at us! It flew! It wasn't human!" The words came in floods. Too many voices. Too much pain. Only Rufaro stayed calm. She walked straight to Miss Doobie and stared her in the eye. "There's something behind the trees," she said simply. "Something that isn't from here." Miss Doob tried to keep her face neutral, but something in the girl's gaze unnerved her. She called all the children back inside. Lockdown was not a word they used often, but that day, the doors were shut early. That afternoon, the headmaster was called. Parents arrived, but explanations didn't. Miss Doob ventured out later with the groundskeeper to check. There was no silver disc, no black figure, no humming. Only a strange round patch of scorched grass. And silence. That night, Rufaro couldn't sleep. She saw the figure every time she closed her eyes. Not in dreams, in memories. It hadn't spoken aloud, but somehow it had spoken. Its voice was not a voice but a feeling, a pressure, a picture. "You're breaking it." That's what she remembered. That's what it showed her. The trees falling, the rivers dark with poison, the earth splitting open like a wound, people running, screaming. "Fire, you're breaking the world." She tried to explain it to her father, who listened while sipping tea from a chipped mug. He laughed, gently. "You have a wild imagination," he said. "That's good. But leave those things for stories." "I didn't imagine it." He only nodded but didn't look at her. No one wanted to believe, except the others, the other children who'd seen it. By the end of the week, whispers passed between the students like prayers. They began to sketch what they saw in their notebooks. The disc, the figure, the eyes. Some parents grew concerned. Others grew angry. When a local journalist arrived, only a few children dared to speak. But their stories matched. Too much, in fact. Too precise. "It's like they all saw the same thing," the reporter muttered into his recorder. Later, when footage was shown to experts, child psychologists were baffled. Too young to lie that well. Too young to organize a hoax of this size. And yet, no evidence of the craft remained, except in their drawings, and in the eyes of the children, now quieter. now watching the skies more than before. 3 days after the sighting, Tapiwa disappeared. He had gone into the fields after school to retrieve a forgotten lunchbox. He never came home. Police searched for days. Sniffer dogs, helicopters, volunteers. Nothing, except, on the 5th night, Miss Doob found a small shoe beside the scorched patch in the field. The same spot from before. His name was written on the inside, Tapiwa M, but the grass around it was warm to the touch. And above them, the stars blinked, the children's connection deepens. More visions. The town turns fearful. What the visitors left behind begins to awaken. 3 days after Tapiwa's disappearance, the school was no longer the same. Classes resumed, but the laughter had gone missing. Children whispered instead of shouting. They sat closer together, eyes glancing toward the windows too often. Even the goats were quieter. Miss Doobie watched them carefully. She had taught many classes, but never one like this. These children were changed, especially Rufaro. That morning, during a silent reading period, Rufaro had suddenly dropped her book. She froze mid-breath, staring at nothing. "Rufaro!" Miss Dube knelt beside her. Rufaro's lips moved, but her voice was distant. "They're not gone. They're waiting." The other children turned. One of the younger girls, barely 6, began to cry. "They keep showing me the fire," Rufaro said. Like they're trying to warn me." "What fire?" "The one that's coming." The local newspaper published a headline. "Alien visitors at local school? Mass hallucination or something more?" An investigative team arrived from Harare the next day. A psychologist, a cameraman, and a woman who introduced herself as Dr. Lena Strauss from a university in South Africa. She wasn't here to laugh. She was here to listen. Each child was interviewed separately. The drawings were collected. Some children drew the figure, others the disc, some the black eyes. But what shocked the team most was what they didn't draw. No child drew each other, or the school, or anything normal. It was as if their entire memory of that moment existed only in that other world, the one they weren't supposed to remember. "You're telling me they all had the same dream?" Dr. Strauss asked her assistant. "This isn't a dream," the assistant replied. "It's a message." Rufaro stopped sleeping. Every time she closed her eyes, the voice returned. Not words exactly, more like images pressed into her skull. She saw the earth, but not as she knew it. From above, a marble of blue and brown. Then time seemed to skip, like a broken reel. Trees falling, ice melting, oceans rising, and the black-eyed figure standing at the edge of it all, watching silently. Sometimes it was Tapiwa she saw, standing in that same place. Silent, but not afraid. One night, Rufaro's body jerked awake at 3 a.m. On her window, drawn in condensation, were 4 strange symbols. She blinked, wiped them. But they were still there, beneath the glass. She tried to draw them, but the shapes wouldn't stay still in her memory. Every time she looked away, she forgot a line. She only remembered the feeling. A warning wrapped in sorrow. The children began gathering without planning to. After school, in the far corner of the playground, they sat in a circle, silent at first. But slowly, they began to speak. Not with their mouths, but with their minds. Rufaro led them, eyes closed, lips parted just slightly. "There is a place," she whispered. "Beyond the sky, where voices speak without sound. And the earth is crying there," said another. "They came because we're not listening." Miss Doob watched from the window. It was as if they had formed a kind of quiet church, bound not by faith but by shared knowledge, a pact. The town was on edge. Some parents demanded the school be closed. Others took their children out of class entirely. Local pastor called the sightings demonic. "Our children are being deceived by dark spirits," he shouted at a town hall meeting. "No spirit teaches warnings of the earth," Miss Doob replied quietly. This was not evil. It was sad, but fear makes people cruel. One night, someone threw stones at Rufaro's house. Her father caught only a glimpse of the running shadows. They left behind a crude sign painted on their gate, "Witch," that night. Rufaro slept in her father's room. Clutching the drawing of the disc, he held her hand and whispered, "What did you see, daughter?" She replied, "I saw our future, and it's sick." Dr. Lena Strauss remained longer than expected. One afternoon, as she sat with Rufaro under a fig tree, she asked a different question. "What do you think they want?" Rufaro stared at her, silent for a long time, then said, "They don't want anything. They're not here for them, they're here for us." Dr. Strauss looked down at her notes. In the corner was her own drawing a figure with black eyes, the same figure she saw when she was 8 in Namibia. She hadn't told anyone, until now. "I saw it too," she whispered. "A long time ago, but no one believed me." Rufaro looked at her with no surprise. That's why you're here, the scientist nodded. To believe. On the 7th day after Tapiwa's disappearance, the grass where the disc had hovered began to grow back, but it glowed faintly at night. Miss Doob saw it herself. Soft like moonlight, soaked into leaves. And then something strange happened. Each of the children who had seen the figure woke up with a mark behind their left ear. Small circle like a birthmark, but shaped too perfectly to be natural. Some parents took them to doctors. Nothing showed on x-rays. But when Dr. Strauss saw them, she trembled. I've seen this before, she murmured. In children who claim they were taken? She nodded. But never so many, never with the same dream. She took photos, sent them to colleagues, but soon communication from her end stopped. Her last message to the school simply read, "They're still watching, be careful," and she was never heard from again. It was the night of the eclipse when the sky opened again. The children had gathered at the edge of the field. Rufaro stood in the center, eyes closed, hand lifted. The moon turned red above them. And then, in utter silence, a second moon appeared. No, not a moon, a craft, bigger this time, like a floating cathedral made of silver and shadow. It hovered silently. Children wept, but not from fear, from recognition. One boy, the youngest, whispered, "They're saying goodbye." Another replied, "No, they're saying remember." And then, like mist folding into mist, the object vanished, leaving. They came in white trucks and gray uniforms. 10 days after the eclipse, a convoy arrived from the capital. Men in pressed suits, with hard eyes and clipped voices. Some wore emblems that read, Ministry of National Security. Others bore no symbols at all. They said they were here for observation and containment. "What are we containing?" Miss Doob asked them. They didn't answer. They sealed off the schoolyard and built a fence around the area where the grass still glowed faintly at night. Instruments were installed. Black towers with blinking red lights, spinning dishes, and humming boxes that no one explained. The children were told not to speak to reporters. Their notebooks were taken, drawings, journals, confiscated for safety. But Rufaro refused to be silent. "They're trying to bury the truth," she told her classmates, "but we're not the ones lying." That night, every child who had seen the figure awoke screaming. They had shared the same vision. A deep, suffocating pressure. The sound of cracking glass, and a sky bleeding fire. But this time, it was different. They felt pain. As if the message had grown teeth. Like it wasn't just a warning anymore, but a demand. "Make them hear," Rufaro whispered through tears. "What if they don't want to hear?" someone asked. "Then we'll have to show them." During the next interview, Rufaro refused to answer questions out loud. Instead, she stared at the man across from her. A stern-faced official with mirrored sunglasses. And the man gasped. His hand began to tremble. Sweat appeared on his brow. What are you doing?" But Rufaro said nothing. She just looked. Later, the man walked out of the room, white-faced and silent. He never returned. Afterward, the psychologist who had been present wrote in her notes. She projected an image into his mind. A clear visual hallucination without stimuli. I saw it too, briefly. The ocean swallowing cities, a planet crying out. She's not just remembering, she's broadcasting. 2 days later, the school was shut down. Pest control, they claimed. Structural safety. But the parents knew better. The real reason was fear. Rumors swirled. That some children had begun moving objects with their minds. That electronics failed in their presence. That birds stopped singing when they walked nearby. A medical team arrived, claiming to examine the children. They ran tests, took blood samples, scanned their heads. When the results came back, they were classified. Miss Doob was told to go home and remain silent about all she had seen. Instead, she wrote everything down, by candlelight, in a thick brown journal she hid beneath her floorboards. One evening, as the sun turned to amber, Anna, the tree-climbing girl, wandered out into the field. She told her younger brother she heard something calling her. A sound, like a song. She was never seen again. This time there was no shoe left behind, only a scorch mark in the shape of a spiral where the grass had been. Her parents broke. Her mother stopped eating. Her father stopped speaking. And yet, the children didn't cry. Not because they didn't care, but because they knew. "She's not gone," Rufaro whispered to Miss Dube. "She's just somewhere brighter." Dr. Lena Strauss came back. Not through official channels, but in secret. She met Rufaro in the forest just beyond the school, beneath the thorn trees. "I couldn't stay away," Lena said. "I tried. But they're waking up everywhere, Rufaro. Children just like you, in Brazil, in India, in Iceland. It's happening." "They're trying to help us," Rufaro said. Lena nodded. "But no one wants their help. They think this is about aliens," Rufaro added. "But it's not. It's about us. We're the disease, and we're the cure. Lena knelt in front of her, holding both her hands. I believe you, all of it, but the world isn't ready. I know, Rufaro whispered. That's why they're starting with children. The night Anna vanished, Rufaro had a dream, but it didn't feel like a dream. She saw Anna standing in a place where time didn't exist, where colors sang and stars bent like rivers. Anna smiled and reached out. I'm not scared, she said. It's beautiful. Then Rufaro woke up with burns on her palms, blistered circles, like she had held something too bright. Her father wept when he saw them. You're too young for this, he whispered. Too young to carry the sky. But Rufaro only smiled. I'm not carrying it, I'm just listening to it. On the last day before the government officially labeled the case closed, something strange occurred. At exactly 2:22 p.m., every television, radio, and computer within a 20-mile radius glitched. And then, a single image appeared on every screen. A black-eyed figure standing beside a burning tree. Behind it, a collapsing earth. And beneath, in bold letters, in dozens of languages, you are breaking the world. The signal lasted exactly 13 seconds. Then, all systems returned to normal, but the message remained burned into every screen and into every mind. That night, Rufaro stood alone in the glowing field. The stars were impossibly clear. The wind tasted like ozone and forgotten prayers. She lifted her hand, and the air answered. A shimmer appeared above her, just like before. But this time, no disk came down. Instead, a small orb of light descended, pulsing softly like a heart. It hovered in front of her, then entered her chest. She didn't flinch, didn't cry. She simply said, I understand now. And from that night on, she could no longer sleep. Not because of fear, but because she heard everything. Every tree sighing, every bird weeping, every star whispering its sorrow. The children didn't call Rufaro a girl anymore. They called her. After the orb entered her, she became quiet. Not because she didn't want to speak, but because everything she needed to say was already being said by the wind, the rain, the trees. She still came to the field every evening. Sometimes she sat, sometimes she stood with arms lifted to the sky. Sometimes she cried, but the tears were silent. Once she touched the earth and the ground bloomed, not with flowers, but with memory. A nearby tree dropped all its leaves in a single moment, and each one bore an etched symbol. The same 4 symbols from her dream. No one could translate them, but everyone felt them. On the 21st day, the glimmering patch in the field disappeared. In its place, a perfect circle of crystal-clear water formed, never seen before. A spring, some said. But the water didn't test as normal. It had no minerals, no contaminants. It was simply water in its purest form. And it healed. The first boy to drink from it had been suffering from asthma for 2 years. By evening, he was breathing clear. His mother wept for 3 hours. Then more came, quietly, cautiously. The government tried to seal off the area. But no matter how many fences they built, people kept finding ways in. The water called to them. It was the first physical gift the visitors had left behind. But not the last. It happened on a Sunday morning. Rufaro stood in the field, her dress catching the wind like a banner. Around her were the remaining children who had seen the sky open, now fewer than 30. The others had moved, disappeared, or gone. Somewhere else. Rufaro spoke, not with her mouth, but her mind. The air around her shimmered. Even the adults who had denied everything came to listen. You asked if this is real, she said. It is more real than your wars, your money, your steel cities. They came not to take us, but to wake us. The fire you see in your dreams is not theirs. It's yours. You lit it. But you can still put it out. We are not alone. But we are the only ones who can save ourselves. They're watching, not to punish, but to remember who we are before we forget. And with that, she stepped forward. Her body shimmered, like air above flame. And then, she vanished. No light, no sound. Just the scent of rain before it falls. The government denied everything. The journalists wrote other stories. The townspeople moved on, at least outwardly, but something had changed. Years passed. The school reopened. Children came and went. But the stories remained, and the spring never dried. Dr. Lena Strauss published a paper anonymously, The Rua Field Phenomenon, that circulated through underground networks. In it, she detailed everything. The sightings, the interviews, the drawings, the symbols. It was dismissed by science, but cherished by the ones who had seen. 10 years later, a construction team renovating the school found a box beneath the floorboards of what had once been Inside, a thick brown journal. Page after page filled with dates, names, sketches, newspaper clippings, and one line written over and over. They came to remind us of our own reflection. The journal was sent to a local archive. But the next week, the archive caught fire. Nothing survived, except that one page. On the 25th anniversary of the sighting, a man appeared at the edge of the field. He looked no older than 15. He wore no shoes. His eyes were wide, clear, black. When the villagers approached, he smiled and said, "I'm looking for Rufaro." They told him she had vanished long ago. He nodded slowly, and then said, "She's not gone. She's everywhere." When asked who he was, he replied, "You knew me once. I lost a lunchbox." He walked into the glowing water, cupped his hands, and drank. And then he too disappeared. Miss Doob, now old, sat beneath the mopane tree where she once watched over children laughing. She no longer taught. She no longer needed to. That night she looked up at the stars. They blinked, shifted, danced. She smiled and whispered, "I believe you now, Rufaro." And for the first time in many years, the sky whispered back,